Let's dive back into your life. Dun, dun, dun. Was Jonathan Groff the first person that you worked with kind of in the industry?
That was, yes, my first TV job was working for Jonathan Groff and John Pollock at the time. I was working for both of them. And I was very lucky because that's a great first person in TV to work with. He's an incredibly funny, incredibly smart man and supportive and nice and also incredibly talented. So that was a great person to learn from. He's a great showrunner, he's a great writer, and he's been very kind to me in terms of his time sometimes reading scripts because he's busy and he reads a million scripts and back before I got any writing work, and helped recommend me to Conan when I went to work for The Tonight Show. I'd worked for him, so then he had recommended me when they were coming over from New York to LA, and and we're talking about Jonathan Groff, the writer, not the actor, because there are some people who go, wait, which one?
Yeah, Jonathan's
Jonathan
with
the Groff
right now, and he's quality.
He's fantastic.
What did you do right before then? Where were you right before you met that kind of first TV job?
I worked as an assistant for a talent manager, Judy Hoffland, and I was still new to LA, out of film school, figuring things out. That was a great, working for a talent manager. I learned a lot. You are working at a busy desk, you kind of see how things get attached and how people get attached, and got to read a lot of scripts, so it was fun. I knew I did not want to be a manager, but it was it was a good place to learn. So I was again lucky to meet some of the people I've met and be able to kind of see from them how they do things and how this crazy business works. And so how do you interview to get into this night show? How does that work? Is it just here's Alison, meet her? I mean, how did that work? Well, it's funny. So with the Tonight Show, there was somebody had put a listing on an NBC website because they were moving over from New York to LA, and I had been a script coordinator at the time, and it said writer's coordinator, and a friend of mine was like, hey, did you see this? You might be into this. And I happened to know Jonathan and called him and asked him. He's like, oh, if you're really interested, I'll recommend you. And so they brought me in for an interview to make sure, I could do things, but also knew my background. I kind of think that I met with a head writer, Mike Sweeney, and I wasn't someone who watched Conan all the time, so I think he liked that I wasn't going to be awestruck every time Conan came in. Yeah. So maybe that helped me. I'm not sure. You could ask him why he hired me. But
that room's got to be a little different than other rooms. I mean, that seems like just an idea push for every single meeting.
It's the schedule you have on a daily talk show where something would happen in the news and then we had to come up with ideas and then props have to be made and everything, so it can be very fly by the seat of your pants, and you kind of have to. It's not a good place if you're I need time to compress and figure this out. You just kind of have to go. And it was a fun group of writers to work with. A lot of people come from stand-up and improv, and just some of the funniest people. And some of the funniest stuff is in the room where you're not in front of live cameras because they're not censored, and it was really fun. And they made me laugh a lot.
Is this where you met your writing partner, Scott, in this room?
Oh, yes, at Conan, how we became buddies. He's a super funny guy, and basically, so during the Tonight Show, the show gets a bunch of magazine subscriptions because we were all looking for stories and things to do on the show, and one was TV Guide, and he and I started reading the letters to TV Guide that people still write letters, and they ask questions that you could Google, and we thought that was hilarious. So we, when the Tonight Show got canceled, we decided to make a little web series together about letters to TV Guide called TV Guide Letter Theater that we made for $100, and it put it out into the world. It was on Funny or Die, and it got featured, and then we were worried TV Guide might sue us, but instead they featured us and gave us a web cheer and invited us to hot list parties, and we were like, oh, that's cool. And so that was sort of how we started working together, and then started writing pilots, and here I am with you.
Well, that does kind of get us to I think, I mean, I first recognized you from Bojack, I think, like most folks, or your podcast, which is pretty big too, 2 Degrees.
Thank you.
How did Bojack come about? I mean, obviously Netflix is a different beast, and how do you work in that room compared to the other rooms you've been in?
I mean, in terms of writing for Bojack, I enjoyed working at Conan, but I mean, I wasn't as interested in being like a monologue writer. Like, I like writing story and I like writing character, and while writing topical jokes is fun, and some of the people who I saw do it every day are so great at it, I knew I was more interested in writing story. But with Bojack, I mean, that was again where like someone knew me and recommended me, and I got in there, and then for Scott and I to get approved to like write some episodes by Netflix, we had a Bob's Burgers spec, and then an original pilot we wrote called The Worst American Hero. That's a weird, funny, with evil clones and holograms. So I think it showed that like we could both write for someone else's voice, and then also that our own voice was weird and quirky, which is what Raphael likes. And but I mean, Bojack is just Raphael's. Like, he has such a strong voice. Like, he knows what he wants. And then with the game show episode, which I think is a lot of people's, we wrote 2 episodes, but that one, I think the game show episode is the one that a lot of people remember. We were just so lucky to like be assigned that one because it was so much fun. And also we were able to use our experience from working in late night TV. Like, Scott had worked at Conan, both the Tonight Show and TBS, and then also had worked at Kimmel too. So we kind of had that knowledge of like what things are like backstage, and I think that kind of came through in the episode. And
it definitely did, yeah.
So, and writing, it's a Mr. Peanut Butter heavy show, and I love Paul F. Tompkins, and it was like so much fun to write for him. And yeah, I mean, that cast is amazing. So we were very, very lucky.
It's got to be freeing to write for a show that doesn't seem to have boundaries at all. I mean, I'm sure it does, but yeah, like, it just seems like you'd be able to throw out anything.
I mean, yeah, it was a great experience. Like, with the way the show works, like everyone breaks like the story in the room as a group, and then you're sent off to outline and then do a draft. And so it is very collaborative, but it's really fun. Like, Scott and I tend to write sometimes in diners, and so like we wrote a lot of Mr. Peanut Butter dialogue and Bojack dialogue, like sitting at I won't say which cafe, but yeah.
Well, I won't ask which cafe, but like, what do y'all eat when you're there? What's your go-to meal? Depends
if I'm being good or bad. Sometimes I want pancakes. So sometimes I'll get, fish and a salad, and once in a while I get sangria if it's late in the day. So.
Why a diner? Like, what makes it freeing there? Is it the people walking around? Do you get inspiration from people?
It's close to my house. They have free wireless, and if it's not a Saturday morning brunch rush, they don't mind if you're sitting there for hours.
Oh, cool.
So, and yeah, I mean, it's just sort of an easy, like, we don't always, but that's one place we've gone a lot. And we've also written at my house because I have a big screen TV. We put Final Draft up, and the same you would in a writer's room, so we do that sometimes too. But Scott has 2 kids, so it's harder to write at his house. It's a good place to go play like My Little Pony, but you can't get as much writing done.
Bojack, My Little Pony mixture.
Yeah. Oh no, kids, no.
So I've got to ask, when it comes to like the podcast world, I mean, I think everyone has their niche that they love listening to, but do you get to listen to other podcasts pretty religiously, or are you kind of away from that world?
I listen to them, but I'm not a dedicated because I probably listen to more music on my commute, and besides my commute, I don't have a lot of time to listen to podcasts. But I mean, I listen to Never Not Funny with Jimmy Pardo, who I worked with at Conan, who I loved, and I listen to John August and Craig Mason's podcast. My husband hosts a podcast for the Final Draft. So I mean, there's so many great. I'm trying to think of like, also, just trying to learn more about the world. But usually I tend to go to music for my commute just to like relax. So it kind of depends. So
you kind of did a nice little connection to AFF with some of those names.
Yeah.
What's it like coming to a city like Austin that obviously for a festival that concentrates on story and concentrates on the writers, which is, you don't really see that.
It's kind of fantastic. I mean, it's I love this town. Like, I feel like if I didn't live in LA, I would enjoy living in Austin, and I love coming here. And everyone's just, it's really like a fun, nice experience. I feel like there's some festivals where there's more like the VIPs are over here, and here it's like everyone's just hanging out, and
yeah, just at the bar right there.
Yeah, at the Driscoll bar a lot, and it's a great experience. And also, what's fun here, like a couple years ago, I was here and Vince Gilligan was here, and I'd met him at Conan, and I know his composer from Breaking Bad, and him at a screenwriting conference, it was like Elvis. Like, for the kids, do they know who Elvis is? Still no. But yeah, like it was like, and it's so great. He in my mind, he's like this walking god, and it's so great to see him get that attention. And I mean, I assume that happens other places too, but obviously, like at a screenwriters conference, someone like that is just.
He was a headliner.
Yeah.
He was top 3 headliner.
Yeah, I just remember being at the barbecue chatting with him, and then like everyone was like, ah. And it's nice to see writers get recognition, because that's where it all starts. So.
When you come here, do you run into writers not thinking you'd run into? I mean, have you had that experience where you've run into? I mean, outside of Vince, obviously.
I've met Shane Black on the way from the airport here, but I kind of knew he was here a lot, so I don't know if I'm surprised. I'm always just happy, and then like I feel like I'll just see random people that are like, oh yeah, I know you, and a friend of mine runs Script Chat, and like so a lot of people know her, Jeannie, and so people are like, oh, you know Jeannie, so it's a fun, 2 degrees of Valley.
What's the wildest 2 degrees you've had? Like, what's the craziest connection point you've had? Not necessarily with the show, but just in general. Like, you met someone through someone, and you were like, holy crap, I get to meet this new person.
Like entertainment related, or
anything? Yeah, anything that shocked you. It could be like a world leader. It doesn't matter.
I don't know if I have any. I mean, a funny thing was one time I got a call to go help Brad Pitt pull a prank on his manager. Is that
Please tell that story if you can. Yeah.
This was like a while ago. It was Jonathan Groff's manager had asked me if I was in between jobs at the point. He was like, hey, could you come and help with a prank? And I was like, sure. And I didn't really know what it was, but I was like, yeah, I'm game. And basically, Brad Pitt was hiring a new assistant, and he'd asked his manager to help with the interviews, and because it's a big client, she said yes. But they wanted someone to be like a ringer, and like so like I had to go in and like pretend to be this like super annoying person, and like who was really demanding, and basically I guess I did a good job, and she was like furious all day, and then they told her it was a prank, and he sent me a nice gift card, and so that was kind of a random.
That's cool.
Random little connection.
Yeah. So I've got to ask, like, what are you writing now? You and Scott working on anything in particular? I mean, what can you sneak peek for us?
We're writing a new pilot. I don't know if I can say what it, just because I don't know. Yeah. But and then also we're going to be pitching around a stoner comedy that we wrote that I would call it sort of like Stoner Curb Your Enthusiasm that we wrote for a comedian friend of ours. So knock on wood, maybe I'll get to talk about that next year.
Yeah, very cool.
I would be very excited.
And then I guess last question to kind of link it back to Austin. When you come back to Austin, do you do anything in town, or are you kind of a bubble right here in the Driscoll?
I will go anywhere there's like good food and drinks. So, but mostly I feel like it's really wherever they tell us to go on the schedule, because it's just such a packed schedule. It's kind of hard to do other things. But I do love going to see the bats under the bridge. That's like, I think, awesome. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Austin, it's been a pleasure.
Thank
obviously
you.
A fan of yours listening to you, so thank you very much.
Thank you.